everyone, and welcome back to our course on modern web development. Today we're going to explore one of the most fundamental and important topics in React called components. Components are the building blocks of any React application. They allow us to split the UI into independent, reusable pieces and think about each piece in separation. So as you've probably noticed in our previous lesson, we already used components and defined some across our application. And instead of just stacking all those bunch of components in one single file, we split them so we can make them more reusable and just not make our code bigger, unclear, and just messy. So what is component essentially? A component in React is a JavaScript function or class that optionally accepts inputs, known as props, and returns a React element that describes how a section of the UI should appear. Let's go back to GitHub Codespaces and explore it in depth. So components can be defined as follows. Functional components, which are JavaScript functions that return JavaScript syntax. And the second type are class components, which are ES6 classes that extend React.component. In modern React development, we primarily use functional components with hooks, which allow us to manage state and side effects. So once again, the explanation for that is that components help us organize our code and make it more efficient and reusable. And by breaking down the UI into smaller components, we can manage each part of the interface independently. Now let's talk about properties on how to pass data with properties. So properties are props, shortly, and they are used to pass data from a parent component to a child component. So once again, to understand props, you need to know that props are inputs to a component. They are passed to the component similar to how arguments are passed to a function, and properties are read-only within the component. That means they should not be modified or changed whatsoever. Let's create our component that displays a greeting message. So let's create a file in our source folder and name it welcome.js. Here we're gonna import React. And we're going to define a new function called welcome. Which will return a heading of hello props name. And we're going to export our component. So each time you're creating a new component and you want to use it across your application, you have to use the syntax to export it and actually use it. So now let's add it to our app.js file by importing it first. So import welcome from quotes dot slash welcome. And here we're gonna pass some names. So welcome name Alice, and we're gonna copy this code and just give it other names such as Arlan, Bob, and here we're gonna export our app. So as an explanation, we define a welcome component that accepts properties. Okay, let's go back here. That accepts properties and uses props.name to display the name. And in app.js, we use the welcome component 3 times with different name props. So let's check it in our React application to see if it works and it displays our names. As you can see, it perfectly displays them since we passed those names and created a new component. So now I want to talk about how to manage a state in our components. State allows components to create and manage their own data. So state is similar to properties but is private and fully controlled by the component. When the state changes, the component re-renders to reflect the new state. And state is managed within the component and can change over time, usually in response to user actions. As an example, let's create a simple counter component. So let's go back to our source folder and create a new component called counter.js. And we're simply going to copy this code, example code from here and paste it. And so we defined a new function called counter, which has count and sets the count with using the state, and here it returns you clicked a certain amount of times, and here we add the button with on-click event that handles the event. We're going to talk about it in just a moment. So first of all, let's use it in our app.js. Let's delete this for now, and okay, we have to import it first. Counter from ./counter, and let's use it. So counter, and check our server if it works, and click me. Yeah, it works. As we are clicking, it handles the event for the button and manages the states, so we can see that we clicked exactly 4 times. So once again, we use state hook right here to create a variable count and a function set count to update it. And when the button is clicked, set count updates the state, causing the component to re-render. And now we're going to talk about how to handle user events. So handling user events like clicks from form submissions and keyboard input is essential for interactive applications, which will be very useful when we're going to create our first AI-powered application later in the course. So events are handled similarly to how they are in the DOM elements, but with some syntactical differences. React events are named using a camel case, such as onClick instead of onClick. So by this I mean we have to use the uppercase after our first phrase, which is on, and we use uppercase click, so it will give us onClick. And in the counter component we have the how we're handling user event. And the onClick, once again, it triggers the provided function when the button is clicked, and we use an arrow function to call set count and update the state. Now let's talk about building an interactive component. So let's build a slightly more complex component that combines both properties and state. Let's create a new file called toggle.js in our source folder. And I'm gonna copy the example code from our lesson and import it here. And now let's use it in our app.js, and I'm gonna explain what everything here means in just a second. So first we'll have to import it as always. Toggle from toggle. And now we're gonna delete this for now and use toggle on text on off text will be equal to off. Oops. Okay, and let's go to our development server and reload the page to see if it works. And yeah, now we have the switcher, which uses both properties and state management. So when we click, it turns to off and then back to on again when we click. So essentially, the toggle component right here uses state to track whether it's on or off, as I just said. It also accepts on text and off text here as properties to display different text, and clicking the button toggles the state and updates the display. Now, as we've discovered all of this, it's time for an exercise. So let's practice what we've just learned. So your exercise would be creating a user card component. So you have to create a UserCard.js, and you have to use the card in app.js, and essentially update app.js to render multiple user card components with different properties. And as an optional, you can add some styling to make the user cards visually appealing. So as an example solution, we're actually going to do it right now. And I'm going to give you a second just to brainstorm and make some coding on your own, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back with the solution and hope you're still here. So bear with me once again. Now we here have our UserCard.js component which have several properties such as name, age, and location, and we simply export our component and use it in our app.js, which has some values, actual values such as Alice, her age is 30, and her location is New York. Let's go to our development server and test if it works. And when we update our app, we can actually see that all the information displays clearly, and it works. So if you got it correctly, congratulations, and excellent work today. So today we've covered components, the fundamental units of React applications, properties, passing data from parent to a child components, state, managing dynamic data within the components, and event handling, which makes components interactive by responding to user actions, such as on-click, on-text, off-text. These concepts are the backbone of React development. So it is very important to understand them, and it will enable you to build more complex, interactive, and dynamic applications. In our next lesson, we'll explore lifecycle methods and hooks, which allow us to manage components' behavior during different phases of their existence. So if you have any questions or need further clarification on the topic, feel free to reach out to me using my LinkedIn, Instagram, or other social media. And before I end the lesson, you actually have a homework, which is a mini project. It's called To-Do List, and it is in the end, so you can explore and do it on your own. And maybe you can even submit it to your own GitHub page and share it with your friends. So happy hacking, and see you in the next lesson. Thank you.